Philadelphia Union, San Jose RDC, Los Angeles Galaxy,
Pitch Pass,
Colorado Rapids, Vancouver Whitecaps, Seattle Sounders, Montreal Impact, Plus USA, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roach.
Oh, welcome to Pitch Pass. We're doing it a little bit differently today, and it's going to be a lot of fun. PitchPass.com for all the information on the show. You know what to do. iTunes, spread the word, the whole 9 yards. I don't know who our second guest is. Doesn't matter, though. We're hanging out with Brian Straus.
Whoever walks up and sits down with us.
Well, look, I'm not going to say where we are because I might bag on this a little bit later on, but we're doing it a little different. We're actually sitting in a bar in Arlington. A little bit of a bro vibe going on here. So
that's every bar in Arlington.
Oh, is that what it is?
We haven't narrowed it down at all.
I had to come to your backyard, so that's why we're here. So I just figured, look, we could have got Brian on the phone, but he's local to the D.C. area. I'm local to the D.C. area, so let's hang out. We're actually drinking some beers. We ordered some dinner. It's going to be very, very casual and relaxed. This is what I was thinking, Brian.
Okay. Don't chew with your mouth full. Don't talk with your mouth full.
There's a whole, if we videotaped this and had a series where we're just hanging out with people in MLS or associated with MLS, we're just eating, we're hanging out, and then we'd videotape and throw it up on YouTube. That could be a thing. Nobody's doing that right now. They're not doing that on Soccer Morning, Brian. They're not doing it on Soccer Morning.
That's true. And I don't mind seeing Jason Davis at 9 a.m., but I'm not sure that anybody wants to watch me eat.
He's local as well. We probably should have some cross-pollination at some point.
He's local, but he's
way out.
Ex-urban local.
Yeah.
So coming into this area
is tough for him.
Yeah, it's a whole covered wagon kind of thing.
So yeah, we don't know who we're going to have on for the second part of the show. We're recording this on Wednesday. Brian, I'm hoping that you're going to just keep us updated on U.S. Open Cup, DC United versus Chicago Fire. You've got the computer there.
The laptop right
here. So maybe
not to spill on it.
Maybe we'll live talk about the match that's happening. You'll get this probably Thursday night. So just to give you backstory. So now we're here with, I didn't even give you the big intro. Sports Illustrated's Brian Straus.
Keeping track of who I work for is not the easiest thing.
Last week we had Grant Wallback on. I would imagine he's Sports Illustrated.
Yes,
one. You're
have,
Sports Illustrated 2.
I have labeled myself on Twitter as Sports Illustrated's other soccer writer. That's my bio. So that's good for me. I am, Grant is the man, and I am more than happy to be the relief pitcher.
I usually have to say to the players when they're on, I go, hey, look, don't give me PC answers. We're having a conversation. Give me your natural answer. I asked Grant last week. I go, hey. Just like the players, look, competition for places now. That's not always a bad thing. And he shifted into Brian's a great writer. I'm really excited to have him on board. I'm like, oh boy, PC Grant.
No, it's look. I mean, Grant is a mammoth name in this business. He's been at SI since mid '90s, late '90s. He's obviously carved out a massive. I mean, to say even niche is the wrong word. I mean, he is the leading name in American soccer journalism, and I am fine with that. I don't want to be that. I have different, strengths. I have a different sort of personality. I do different kinds of work.
Yeah.
And he is amazing at sort of. I mean, he's got he's the guy who can get us sit down with Jose Mourinho and Sir Alex and people of that stature. And I'm the guy who likes writing about Open Cup. So. It's a good partnership. I mean, he was instrumental in getting me to SI. I'm a big fan of his work, and no, I mean, no PC at all. I mean, it's a good complementary setup, and I'm happy to do the grunt work.
Well, since you're going no PC, let's talk about your former employer, and not in a negative way, but I do want to ask you. Everything kind of went down.
Do you think people care about this?
I think that people care about what I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
And tell me if I'm wrong. Just say I don't think people care.
Okay. It's just weird to be. I'm not normally the subject.
The
of
subject,
the conversation.
but that's why it's interesting.
Okay.
Soon after everything went down, everything kind of happened with your former employer. Not too long after your now infamous column broke about what's going on inside the men's soccer team. Was there any fallout for you within the world of soccer? And by that I mean, did Jurgen pull you aside the next time you talked to him and go, hey, come on, buddy, what are you doing? Were any of the players?
Well, I got let go 8 days later. So
So have you been in the mix with them since then?
The only national team game, no. I mean, I basically no. I was let go. I was in Denver for the qualifier against Costa Rica, and obviously that story was the topic of conversation.
Yep.
And then the snowstorm and the wind sort of changed everything. I did not go to Mexico City, and I was the layoffs happened the day after the qualifier in Mexico, so I was out. I was out of work. I was on my couch. When I was hired by Sports Illustrated, they had already made plans for Grant to go to the Gold Cup games. So I did go to the game in Baltimore. It's right down the street.
Yeah.
So I did go to that, but didn't deal with any of the players or deal with Jurgen or anything like that. So no, there hasn't been any. I mean, U.S. Soccer, the PR staff is cool.
I was going to say, do you have any apprehension as you move forward?
They are
with
the U.S. Soccer PR people, Neil Beathy, Michael Cameraman, could not be more professional. They know I kept them in the loop the whole time. They know what's going on. They know how, they know that everything was done professionally and correctly. No problems with them at all. They don't seem to have any problems with me. But no, I have not spoken to Jurgen yet. I don't know what Jurgen's feelings are about me. They may have changed over the past 4 months. I don't know. And maybe sometime we'll have a chat, or maybe we won't. Either way, I'll continue covering the national team like I've been covering them for a decade.
Do you want to talk about things other than yourself?
Now?
God, you're so self-centered, Brian. Jeez.
Can we start now?
I got you here. I don't really want to break down X's and O's. That's not what the show's about, obviously. And it's also, I don't, to me, there's so many big picture things going on in MLS. Over the course of the last week, you can start with the Dempsey thing. But
crazy week.
It's been a crazy
epic,
week.
historic week for MLS.
So crazy that I think, and I don't know if you want to speak on this or you just want to gloss over it, the Columbus Crew thing, I think, is kind of flying way under the radar because of what happened a day later.
Yeah.
So Columbus Crew, new ownership group. Is it a bigger deal that they have new owners, or is it a bigger deal that the Hunts are continuing their step away from MLS? It's
actually that's one of my that's on the to-do list is a conversation with Precourt about his plans for Columbus. It's a big story, and yeah, I mean it was announced the day before the All-Star game. We were all in Kansas City, and everyone was focused on that. Then everyone was focused on the game. Then everyone was focused on expansion, and now you're focused on that massive hamburger that just arrived.
This isn't the burger I ordered, by the way, but that's
what's
fine.
What's that pile of white
goo
on top?
I don't know what that is. Yeah, all right. Go ahead, continue.
Looks like a polar bear threw up on your hamburger.
Or exploded on it.
Yeah. It's big again because you're talking about diversification of ownership. You're talking about close to $70 million being spent on a team that is regarded as one of the stragglers.
Yes.
That is still part of, we've beaten this metaphor to death now, but part of MLS 1.0. And they have been stuck in a bit of a rut in a lot of ways, in terms of their market, in terms of their brand, in terms of their performance on the field.
Even their stadium.
The stadium, right. What we all were thrilled to see in whatever, oh my God, I don't even know when it opened, 99?
99, 98.
Is now, I don't know, quaint, out of date. So it's big, and guys like this. Look, this guy's from San Francisco. He's really, really wealthy. These people who investment bankers and institutional investors. I don't even know what half that stuff means. But these people don't get into things to do it half-assed or to fail. And so I've talked to contacted the Crew, who says that they're waiting to see what's going to happen. But obviously things are going to change. I mean, this is the Hunts have done things a certain way for a long, long time. They are revered. There is no MLS without them. But I think it's fair to say, without criticizing them, that the Columbus Crew and FC Dallas are not two of the vanguards of MLS.
Yes.
And so allowing the Hunts to focus on one team and try to do that to the best of their ability and have this guy come in, it can only be a good thing.
And just taking it big headlines, the fact that...
Can I eat a pickle?
Go ahead.
All right.
Enjoy yourself. The fact that a year ago, DC United sells for $50 million. Now, I know it's a different stadium situation as far as revenue generating. And then a year later, a team in a smaller market goes for almost $70 million. That speaks volumes as to where MLS is financially right now.
And in Columbus.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a quote-unquote big market. It's a fascinating situation because in Columbus you have I don't know a ton about Columbus, but my guess is Ohio State football is bigger in Columbus than the Redskins are here. I mean, I think
it's much more concentrated,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, based upon anecdotal evidence, I mean, as big as the Skins are here, the Buckeyes are just they are 8 elephants in the room, and all of the pro sports teams have sort of had trouble carving out their niche in a city where the spring Ohio State football game is going to be the biggest story for months. And that being said, Mark McCullers, who's the president of the club, they've launched maybe it was a year and a half ago, they launched a season ticket drive to try to get up to 10,000 season tickets. I think they're doing pretty well on that. I don't know the exact numbers, but there's definitely progress being made. I'm sure they have more season tickets or season ticket equivalents than a lot of other clubs around the league. It's a well-run club on the soccer side, too. Their reserve team has won championships. They've had youth teams win championships. There is talent there, and there are some things there that are being done right. I think the brand is weak. I think that they have not done a good job of sort of carving out that niche in their market, and they haven't done a good job of sort of keeping pace with the teams in this league that are sort of turning the corner and taking MLS to a new level.
But tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like everything you're saying, it sounds like this is a perfect time to do a Sporting Kansas City type reboot of the franchise.
Well, I'll know more. I mean, I wish we were having this conversation after Monday or Tuesday when I actually get the chance to talk to Precourt and get a sense of what he's doing. Columbus isn't nearly in the bad shape that Kansas City was. I mean, when I went out there last year to do that big 2-part series on them, my favorite stat was that they ranked 19th in merchandise sales in an 18-team league at the time. And that was because more people bought stuff that actually had just the MLS logo than Kansas City. Like they were losing out to the league logo.
I'm a logo.
So they were a non-entity. They were in. I mean, it's like they were in the negative.
Yeah.
Columbus is not there. Columbus, they have some diehards. They have some tradition. They have a stadium. And I've been to Columbus. I mean, people there say it's far out, but it's really not that far out. It's like a 5-minute drive from downtown. It's not that bad. My personal opinion, and I was glad to see Precourt make reference to it, and this is going to sound kind of nerdy, but I think it matters, is they got to ditch the logo. They have to ditch that thing.
No more crew.
No. The name is fine.
Just no hard hat.
What does that have to do with Columbus? What do 3 construction workers have to do with Columbus?
People are
seriously.
building things.
We'll be here all day. No one will come up with it. I did this thing on Twitter a couple weeks ago. It was a Sunday night. I was watching a game, just sitting on the couch doing not much of anything, and somehow I stumbled upon a logo for one of the American Outlaws chapters, and it was awesome. And it was like a Dakota thing, and it was the presidents on Mount Rushmore wearing bandanas.
Cool.
And it was badass. And so I started looking at more of them, and I eventually collected a bunch of them and posted them on Twitter, and people loved it. And one of the things all these logos had in common was some sort of local or civic imagery.
Connecting the American to the local aspect of
the DCAO logo was George Washington with a bandana. It could be a piece of architecture, a famous statue, some kind of symbol that connect. That's what all over the world. Soccer is a local game, and it's an opportunity for people to go to the stadium and support and cheer on players and a club and an institution that represents them. And the construction workers. Columbus is, I've said this before, Columbus is a government town. It's a university town. It's named after an Italian explorer. It is.
There's a lot of different ways you could have gone other than construction work.
Now, obviously, Real Salt Lake doesn't apply either. There are no Spanish kings in Utah, but they have managed to overcome that branding sort of disconnect with a really good team and a really good organization and a good stadium and a lot of other things. But in my opinion, Columbus needs to connect with its hometown. They need a badge that signifies Columbus. The name is cool. The colors are cool. If I was going to do that, that would be my reboot. I think you get one chance to sort of rebrand yourself. I would start there
with the logo.
I don't have a problem. It's always weird to say things like that, but Maybe it's time to evaluate Robert Barzija as sort of the coach and the technical engine of that organization. He's been there a long, long time. And sometimes, as you know, in every sport, sometimes you just need a different voice.
Well, and let's not act like there's a history of success as well. It's just not one of those things where you can go, well, look at everything he's done in the past. He's not a Sir Alex Ferguson.
Right. He was obviously a huge part of the organization that won the double in 2008. They won the Supporters' Shield the next year, I think, in 2009. But no, it's been 3 or 4 fallow years. And I think the Hunts are known for their loyalty. And I think a lot of times when someone's been a really good servant, it's hard to pull the trigger. And I think if they do pull the trigger on a move, it's not necessarily that he doesn't know what he's doing or anything like that. Sometimes you just need a different voice, and a new owner and a new logo and a new coach would, I think, galvanize things.
The only other thing we're going to talk about, and I welcome this little back and forth because
I'm going to have a bite of my wrap.
Go ahead. You know your stuff, and I'd like to be educated while I'm giving my opinions out, is the Dempsey deal. But I don't want to talk about the Dempsey deal. I want to talk about the Dempsey deal, to me, which leads to the bigger picture or the bigger issue, and that is, has the time of single entity passed? And first of all, I like to go on record as saying the Dempsey deal is fantastic for MLS. I don't care that he landed in Seattle. I really don't care that MLS paid the transfer fee. What I do care about, and Stephen Goff wrote a fantastic write-up on this in the Washington Post, is the
reason that I am sitting here talking to you as a writer for Sports Illustrated is Stephen Goff.
So you could nod, you nod along, and
cannot imagine a better mentor and a guy to learn from than he was.
And I think a guy like that, who, and forgive me if I offend you with this, the polar opposite of you, where he's just even-keeled and nothing bothers him. So whereas you are a very excitable boy. Warren Zevon said it best. You're a very excitable boy.
keeps things interesting.
When he is exasperated at the procedures or the way that MLS does things, then you really at that point know, okay, wait a second. If this guy who nothing bothers and is completely objective at all times and never rocks the boat.
It's funny because I'm less bothered by it than he is, so figure that out.
So when he is finally putting his hand up and saying, this is getting a little bit ridiculous, that's when I go, oh, wait a second.
Right.
He's bothered. We might have a problem. So where are we at with single entity? And let's start the back and forth now.
To me, I guess my first instinct is to say let's not generalize. Let's actually look at what's upset people and figure out, again, back to what I said before. People jump to conclusions about my layoff. The answers were there. They were just a little bit harder to find. Let's not do the same thing with this.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a slight parallel there. As I was spending 2 hours the other day answering tweets from angry Timbers fans, it made, and actually one of them even brought up my layoff, which was very kind. It was a parallel for me. So first of all, the league. When people say the league, when people say Garber, the league did this, Garber did this. The league is the clubs. The member, the board of governors, the ones with the money and the ones who decide how to spend it, are the clubs, are the owners of each club. Anthony Precourt is now one of the men or entities who decides what MLS does and how it spends its money.
Okay,
so when the
how
clubs,
does it break down though?
But the thing is when MLS pays Dempsey's transfer fee, what that really means is the clubs paid Dempsey's transfer fee.
Yes,
the clubs that are going to be going up against Dempsey decided that it was best for them and the league in the long run that Dempsey was in MLS.
But does it have to be a majority rule? Is it a unanimous rule? How do we vote on that?
I have asked and I don't know.
So again, this goes back to the transparency rule because my thinking is when you bring a guy in like Tahir and once he gets a stadium, you bring a guy in like Precourt, the balance of power between the haves and the have-nots start to significantly shift towards the haves. If you've got more deep pocket owners than not deep pocket owners, well then, and if it's majority rule, then the deep pockets are going to start winning more often than not.
Right. That is true. And I've asked a couple people, and I don't know exactly what the mechanism is. I want people, I guess, to understand that there isn't a independent entity.
Don Garber isn't saying I'm signing off on this and not that.
Wouldn't that runs the league separate from and without consent of the clubs? That does not exist.
TFC's big why they're upset. Two reasons. One, I'm not.
Sorry, Toronto or Portland?
TFC, Toronto.
Okay.
The first reason, which I don't want to ask you about, which is according to your colleague Grant Wall, they were asked to step back from the Dempsey negotiations, and they did. The one I do want to ask you about is TFC fans are upset because they wanted Olaf Melberg in the league, and the league said we are not paying that transfer fee. If you're going to decide arbitrarily, we'll pay this fee, we won't pay that fee. I understand why Dempsey is more important to the league and position-wise, nationality-wise, over Melberg, but you could see why people would go, wait a second.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely opened a Pandora's box, and I guess, and again, I'm just presenting another side of the discussion or the argument here. It is uncomfortable, but at the same time, it is the clubs themselves that are making these decisions. They have entered into this league. They run the league. I think we'd all agree that we'd want the clubs in the league to be the ones deciding how it's run. The alternative is a little bit scarier.
Yeah.
Then things are happening to the teams. So the clubs collectively, just like a board of directors, just like Congress, just like, I don't know, when you vote in your family, whether you're going to one restaurant or the other, however they manage to do it, that the clubs decided that Melberg wasn't worth paying for, and Dempsey was. And Seattle was the team willing to pay whatever it was, close to $30 million to get him. Big Apple Soccer today reported that the Red Bulls knew about the possibility of Dempsey's arrival, that they discussed it with the league, that they discussed it among themselves, how much it would cost, and they decided that it wasn't worth the money to them. They didn't want to spend the money.
That's interesting that it came out because, to me, of the three teams that he mentioned, the fourth team, New York Red Bulls, was obvious by their absence in the discussion because they also have the funds and the means to pay that contract.
So, so what happened is the league, which is either the clubs or the people hired by the clubs to do the paperwork, decided that Dempsey was worth the money and Melberg wasn't. And again, something I wrote on Twitter the other day that sort of got the Portland fans kind of in my lap was, if we found out, Greg, if we found out that the league could have gotten Dempsey and didn't, oh my God!
Remember you tweeted about that.
They would get destroyed.
Totally.
So if these were the options, if and again we can go back to single entity, but if the way the league is constructed, if the option was the clubs collectively pay the transfer fee on behalf of one of their members, or he doesn't come back,
the club,
what's your choice?
Totally.
Right.
Totally. Let me ask you this. The fear, if I'm going to go worst case scenario, if I'm starting to get nervous, this felt like
It's that hookah next to us that's making you nervous.
There's definitely hookah going on right next to us.
It's fruity.
This could have been, or this could be, the old NASL breaking point moment for MLS.
Wow, that is worst case scenario.
But that's when I'm thinking about everything from all angles, and I'm reading all the tweets and everything.
That's the thing that starts the arms race somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It starts the arms race that then now everybody needs to overspend. And Dempsey, we can argue whether it was a good signing or not. Most people would say that it's a good signing. It's good for the league. But the third one in this row.
Did Beckham and Henry? If Beckham and Henry didn't. And maybe they did. Maybe this is Seattle's answer to Beckham and Henry. I'm just wondering.
Well, I think
why would this be a tipping point and maybe that wasn't?
Because, and I know that Seattle's always had deep pockets, and I know Seattle has always had DPs, but this is now puts them in the Galaxy Red Bull spending for their DPs. This puts them over the 3 million, 4 million, whatever your threshold may be. So now we have a third club that has now said, all right, you know what? Now we're going to start spending $4 million for our DPs. You also have TFC, who has kind of been out there saying, look, if the $4 million DP comes available, we're going to go for them.
But as long as there are only 3 DPs and those slots aren't tradable, then yes, I mean they could.
But that goes back to my how does the league, how do the owners in the league decide what we're going to do? Because now if we have a shift in the balance of power where we have more deep pocket than cheaper, for lack of a better word, owners, then when the next time vote comes up, it's, you know what, we need 5 DPs now.
Right. It's
and
possible.
then that goes through, and now we need to spend more to get those
Columbus
two.
and Salt Lake and Dallas,
and that's my question.
Yeah, no, I don't have an answer to it. It's a great question, and you know, the people who have been with this league. I mean, I guess Garber's not been there from the start, but soon after, you know, the Mark Abbotts and the Nelson Rodriguez's and the owners, you know, the Hunts, the Crafts, AEG, the people that built the foundation and sustained this league through some very, very rough times when things looked like they were going to fall apart. You would, I guess, hope that they have the institutional memory to sort of try to build some consensus and remind people what got the league this far, and not to go the way of the NASL, and not to sort of look at it. You know, the lead to my CCL column today was about people frustrated with the slow growth of the league and how the past week has been pretty glorious.
Yes.
For people who want to see big steps. Big steps are fun and big steps are necessary over longer periods of time. But this league has gotten from 10 teams to 19, then to 20, and then perhaps to 24 by being really patient. And so hopefully, you know, the phrase "cool heads will prevail," and they'll realize that, you know, 5 DPs may be good for 4 or 5 clubs, but it may kill 10 others.
You know, and you brought up expansion.
You hope that.
Which triggered then now the 5th team in my head, which is NYCFC,
right,
who are obviously going to come in with the deep pockets. In your mind, single entities still very important for the growth of the league.
Yeah, because the most that the league can do, the real goal for the league is should be to not wind up like the leagues in Europe, where
wind up,
where it's so top heavy and so non-competitive that basically 3/4 of the teams go into every season knowing they have no chance, knowing that they have absolutely zero chance to win. You know, I did an interview with Robbie Keane before the season, and I remember he was talking about the things that he liked about MLS and the things he didn't like so much. And actually, he made a point of saying there should be 5 DPs on each team. But of course, he plays for the Galaxy. But he was saying how, you know, in England, if you play for a handful of clubs in England, you could look at your schedule before the season and, you know, win. And he said MLS was tough because you really can't do that. You know, every weekend there's a ridiculous result in MLS. And that makes it exciting, and it makes it fun, and it makes it unpredictable. And I hope that the people who run the league know where their bread is buttered and know that they are doing themselves a disservice in the long run if they turn this competition into something that's predictable.
And I think that one of the things that nobody's really talking about, or maybe they're talking about it, but I mean, let's not hand Seattle an MLS Cup. They do have some holes still. Someone
mentioned the Yankees. Do we want them to turn into the Yankees on Twitter? And so I looked it up, and the Yankees have only won one of the past dozen World Series.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny that
money's good, but it doesn't.
It's funny that you would say that. I talked to Casey Keller 2 years ago for this podcast, and he said the goal for Sounders was to be Manchester United and the New York Yankees of MLS. He said it was impossible under the current setup, but that's their long-term goal.
They're not going to let money stand in their way.
Yeah.
They're not going to, you know, they're not going to do things because it costs too much. And they're not going to not do things because it costs too much. But yes, they're still going to play within the rules, and I would hope that they understand that the rules are there for the collective good.
And at some point, though, and now I'm going to jump on the other side and play devil's advocate to the point I just made. At some point, though, it does need to be opened up, and I don't think that we're that far away from that time. You know, we talked about the balance of deeper owners versus owners who don't like to spend as much. If the scale tips to, hey, we have 15 owners who are now willing to pay $5 million for a DP and are willing to go to 5 DPs, we shouldn't stop just because there are the Hunts of the world who are still saying no. We don't want any DPs on our team. And at that point, then those guys are actually holding the lead back from where it could be.
I think we may get there. I
don't think we're far off.
I hadn't thought that far ahead in terms of the hypothetical, but it's interesting.
But you say that far ahead. I mean,
I think we're
We mentioned.
I think we're further ahead than you might. I don't think it's impossible to imagine. I think when you talk, when the league and then the commissioner talk about this 2022, we want to be one of the best leagues in the world. I mean, yeah, that's 9 years away. But yes, you can see at that point something like what you're talking about starting to happen. A lot's going to have to do with the money that comes in for the next one or two TV deals. That and the CBA. But 2014 is a big year for this league. The end of 2014. Because both the CBA and the TV contracts expire. So we're going to learn a lot about the near-term future of this league at the end of next season when those deals start to get hammered out. But to me, I like the fact that MLS is a test of player development and player identification and intelligence and tactics and savvy and coaching, and not a test of who can write the biggest check.
Yes.
That's what makes MLS interesting to me. So as long as there are rules in place that reward the smarter team, even if there are 5 DPs, you still have to be smart. Even if the salary budget doubles, you still have to be smart. So you can raise the line of equality for everybody, but still have it there.
Yes.
I don't want a Wild West,
race to sign Josie Altidore.
Law of the jungle kind of situation where 2 or 3 teams are running roughshod over everybody else. Someone made the point the other day, and I don't technically know if this is true, but it sounds right. Why is MLS favoring why is MLS favoring Seattle? Why are they treating the? And someone said, well, in Spain, Madrid and Barcelona get half of the TV revenue, and the other 18 teams in La Liga split the other half. So that's wrong. That's institutional and permanent, entrenched upper class and lower class. So to me, as long as the rules are the same for everybody, I'm good.
And I can look at I take comfort in the fact that I can look at Houston, I can look at Kansas City, I can look at Salt Lake City, and I can say to myself, okay, you know what? They do have DPs on their team. They're not budget-busting DPs, and they field competitive and in a lot of cases ultra-competitive teams. And as long as there are a number of teams that I can look at and say, you know what, they're doing it the old school way, quote unquote, without writing the biggest check, and they're still not only competitive but favored in a lot of situations, then we're still on the right track of where we're going.
Yeah, I mean tonight the second game, you got guys like Javier Morales and Diego Valeri, and I mean there are a lot of good players out there that can be had by
Portland's another great example.
By smart teams. That's the thing. By smart teams for reasonable money. So no, I mean I think it's a great point you're making. I think we're gonna hit a point, and perhaps relatively soon, where there's a critical mass of owners who want to start spending more money and putting more money into the product. Hopefully that is accompanied by putting money into development and academies and things of that nature. It shouldn't be all about splashing it out on a guy like Henry or Dempsey. But like I said, as long as as long as it's the same number of DPs for everybody, as long as there's a significant cap hit, as long as the budget stays the same for everyone, then it'll still be the teams that manage. I mean, when the Galaxy won Cup a couple years ago, it was the first time a team with a DP. I mean, what had it been? Been 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's not a guaranteed success, and it's a tough line to toe. And I think, have there been missteps? Has there been clumsiness? Look, MLS not having on their website that DPs were exempt from the allocation order, it's always been that way. That's always been the rule, but it wasn't there in black and white, and that was clumsy. Even if it was a clerical error, it was really clumsy that wasn't up there, and it leads people to start believing
in the conspiracy
theories and all that kind of stuff. So these are things the league has to tighten up. They have to get better. The issue of transparency. In this case, like I said, the fact that the whole DP allocation, what trumps what, that was literally, I really, really believe this, an oversight. MLS just botched that. The rule has always been there. But in the case of, people who, like Steve, like you brought up at the beginning, who are starting to bristle about how opaque how does Seattle stay under the cap? How does this happen? How do the Galaxy stay under the cap? Oh, yeah, well, there's allocation money, but we can't tell you how much it is.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that obviously, you could probably tack on, I don't know, I'm guessing $300,000, $500,000 for multiple consecutive CONCACAF Champions League appearances.
Yeah.
You get a boost in the allocation for that.
The retention funds thing, which popped up out of nowhere.
We have no idea how much that is. Agents, I understand, aren't allowed to know how much is available. So imagine you're an agent and you're trying to negotiate a deal for your client, and you don't even know what the team has available to spend. How do you even begin to know what to ask for or what to bargain for
Great point.
when you don't know what their resources are? You know,
Great point.
And the team doesn't have to tell you. So these are problems. The Dempsey thing is not as much of a problem for me as the lack of transparency in terms of these extra funds that the team have to play with beyond the cap, which are tradable, you know, which are confidential, to the point where not even the players and their agents necessarily know what's happening. And that's the next step for the league to take.
And you brought this up, and I think, to me, this is the next hot button issue. Secondary, the public hot button issue is going to be the TV deal, and everybody realizes that the TV deal, how important it is to get it locked down past 2014. But you just mentioned it. The CBA is also up the same time, and you know, everybody's very, very happy and patting themselves on the back about the Dempsey deal, and oh my God, the league just can't
cry poor anymore, can they?
Cry poor anymore, and you know, credit to Amobi Okugo, who said it in a congratulatory way, but also got his point across of congratulations to him. We still got guys making the minimum. He's not one of the guys making the minimum, but he definitely. I love the fact that he wasn't afraid to step up.
No,
that
was tremendous, and Obafemi Martins as well, making the comment about Eddie Johnson. And no, I think it's fabulous, and I think the more. And remember, it is the union. It is the players' union that shares the salaries with the public, not the league.
Not the league.
If it was up to the league, we would have no clue what any of these guys were making. And even after these salaries are published, if you look at every MLS press release, it still says, you know, terms were not disclosed. You know, MLS does not disclose, and it, you know, specifics of whatever. So, no, I know that was. I thought in both their cases, in Martins and Okugo, that was pretty awesome.
How much of a firestorm is this going to be?
I think it's going to be tough for the league. I think the league has taken a calculated gamble here with this Dempsey thing, and part of me believes that having Dempsey, you know, why would the clubs chip in to bring a guy here who's going to score goals against them? Because the value of their entire enterprise is about to go up. Because when they negotiate their next TV contract, Dempsey's name may come up.
Get the 4 more entrance fees into the league.
All of that stuff, right. So the downside, right. You know, you're right, Akugo's right. There is no crying poor anymore. There is money being made, maybe not by all the teams, maybe not in every market, but there is money to spend. You know, it's interesting. The issue of the minimum salary, which I don't know is what, 40?
42?
Is it
something?
42? I should know that. You know, I wonder how much push. It looks terrible, but the guys who are, but not to sound like a cynic, the guys who are making 42, I don't know what giving them 62 is going to change. It'll change their lives individually, but what will it do for the entertainment value, for the quality of play?
Nothing.
I don't know what it'll do for that.
To me, it's 85 to 100. That's the minimum.
It's the starters. I mean, it's the guys who are on the field starting, playing 25 games a year. You know,
Clint Irwin just had a fantastic.
Think about the Houston Dynamo and how perhaps they're able to keep their team together because they sell Jeff Cameron. You know, you make 2 straight MLS Cup finals. You're doing really well. You got guys coming up who want new deals. You got guys who deserve new deals. You can't keep them all. You know, the CONCACAF Champions League allocation money is not going to be enough for you to do that. But you sell Jeff Cameron for a couple million, and all of a sudden
now you have the funds.
So that to me is the issue: is keeping these teams together. You know, obviously Salt Lake is so well run that they were able to survive the departure of.
But if they had their druthers, they wouldn't have traded Will Johnson.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have traded Hollis and Olave and Spindler.
Right.
Yeah.
So exactly. So to me, you'd love to see everybody make more. I mean, it obviously it's got to be tough for these guys to be living on that little. It is certainly in certain markets. But yeah, the real issue to me is that next level of player, the guys who are regulars and the guys who you want to keep, the guys who are going to do well and earn more money and you want to keep at your club.
So if we are going to play armchair negotiator, like an NBA Bird exception type of situation, would that be good for MLS where you can go over the cap to re-sign your
Well,
guys.
that's kind of what these retention funds are, right? I mean,
But
I
again,
think.
we're so vague on what they are and how they can be utilized, and you have to be a certain age, but we don't know what the age is. We just need some more transparency.
Right. And again, it's about getting a sense of what funds are available, and again, letting the players and the agents know what they're negotiating.
And this goes back to MLS 1.0 versus MLS 2.0. You could get away with that because nobody was really closely paying attention because there was no DPs. We were all making kind of the same thing. But in this environment where, Deadspin feels like every day has an MLS-related post, and, say what you want about
I remember
them.
someone telling me years ago, someone who had some ties with some people at CONCACAF, and they were telling me years ago, I asked something. It was apparent at that point. Let's say this was a decade ago. I don't know. It was a while. But it was apparent at that point that CONCACAF was just run by a bunch of crooks.
Yeah.
It was kind of ridiculous, and this was well before the Champions League and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the person telling me that sort of CONCACAF was kept sort of small and weird and inscrutable, partly on purpose, because when you start attracting attention to yourself, people start asking questions. And it's better to sort of not share a small pie than have to share a big one.
Yes.
And I've always sort of had that in the back of my mind. And this is not to say that anyone at MLS is a crook, but it is, to your point, that, yes, people are now paying attention.
Yes.
The spotlight is on. People like us are having these conversations. Fans are mad. Fans are demanding transparency. They hung banners up. I think the Timbers Army hung a banner. The fans are demanding more. They are asking in exchange for their loyalty and their money.
Yeah.
The confirmation that they are supporting a fair competition.
Yeah, put on your big boy pants.
The pressure.
Let's see everything.
And that's what Steve wrote. I mean, that was why Steve Goff's column was so great, because he sort of tied it into that whole idea of adolescence.
Yes.
And this stuff is coming. I think you can be transparent and still be fair and still have a competition where teams will win as a result of their, like I said, their coaching, their player development, their player identification, and not because they can write the biggest checks, and that is MLS's challenge.
Well, let me ask you this, and this will be the last thing. I don't even know if we're going to get to the second guest. This could be just a whole self-contained podcast now.
God, if anyone's still listening at this point. Wow.
But let me ask you this as we leave. You said it was clumsy the way everything was handled with the Dempsey transfer.
That's my opinion.
Which leads me down a path of, okay, you know what? They don't know any better. So, okay, they need to be more transparent, but they're not doing it out of malice. They're doing it just because they're not used to having all these eyes on them.
There's sometimes when I'm writing a story and I have 3 sentences in my head at once, and I write half of one and half of the other, and I forget to go back and check it, and it lands at the editor. The editor's like,
"What are you doing?
Well, this is Klingon. What are you talking about?" That stuff happens, and that's kind of I think it's more something like that than it is
some sort of nefarious. Look,
no,
we're not telling you about this rule because it gives the illusion, and you brought it up, that behind the scenes, Garber is like a Machiavellian type figure where he's like, okay, you know what? I want to get this guy in the league, so I'm going to tweak a rule here. If you're saying it's clumsiness,
to the best of my and I'm saying that to the best of my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong. Of course, maybe I'm wrong. But to the best of my knowledge, based upon the reporting I've done, the questions I've asked, the people I've talked to, this was a rule in terms of DP trumping allocation that was always in place. It was understood that was the rule, and it simply wasn't conveyed well to the public.
Which leads to my question. Do they not want transparency because it will show that they are doing things that are unfair, or are they not, or is transparency not there because they're still in, as Stephen Goff said, in their adolescence, and they're still clumsy in the way that they present things?
It's a good question. I mean, I wonder in terms of their dealings in terms of player signings, especially in terms of foreign players dealing with their agents, maybe they think they have some kind of competitive leverage because you never know. Like I said, these agents don't know how many retention funds or allocation funds they have. So in a sense, that gives the club a lot of leverage in those negotiations. So yeah, I mean, is that nefarious? It's a strong word, but it's it's not ideal.
But by not being transparent,
it's not ideal.
You lead me down the road to think that.
I also think that it is a it is a competitive issue between the clubs. Clubs trade allocation money, right? They make these deals with each other, and my impression is that the clubs themselves have decided that these deals can be conducted more fairly in a way
behind closed doors.
Look, it's like in poker; you don't show your whole hand, and so this is that's what this is.
And that
this,
makes sense.
This allows the clubs to sort of keep some stuff away from the others, allows them to maintain a bit of a competitive advantage and a bit of leverage when dealing in negotiations with their other clubs.
And that makes sense. If I'm TFC and I'm making a trade and I'm getting $200,000 worth of allocation money, I may not want my fan base to know that I have $200,000 now over the cap.
Or
that
you
I
don't
can
want
go.
a team that you may make a subsequent deal with
or
to know
that
right.
as well.
So how do you maintain that privacy and that leverage without telling you and me and everyone else
True.
how much allocation of money there is? It is not that fans want it to be black and white. A lot of times you and I and people in the media want it to be black and white. It is complicated. It is not black and white. But like I said, for the Dempsey thing, I just think that this was something that the league handled and communicated less than ideally, and believe me, they are learning a lesson from it.
And I think as an American, my first reaction or my first response to that point is...
Can we pipe in patriotic music?
We definitely will. I mean, it's in the theme song, so definitely.
Some Sousa.
As an American, I think to myself, well, I mean, my baseball rules aren't vague. My football rules aren't vague. My basketball rules aren't vague. But I think the difference is we're not just dealing with a national league. We're dealing with people who will also have to deal on an international level,
Sure.
where transfer fees involved and other different things are involved. Whereas those leagues are just American leagues, and that's why I think I need to, and I think a lot of MLS fans need to grow out of the mindset of, well, I just want it to be just as transparent.
There have been crippling strikes and or lockouts
in all of those
in all
leagues.
of them recently. So there's more money being thrown around at those leagues, but there's also a bit of chaos as well, transparent or not.
We did it differently. I'm going to let you eat, but I love that we didn't just do the interview question and answer. We did the back and forth, and for me it was a lot of fun, and I hope the listener enjoyed it well. Brian Straus of Sports Illustrated, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure. Glad to be back. Hope to be on again soon.